So, Anum, how are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you? I'm alive.
Alive is the best we can hope for these days with the way
Yep.
that the world is. Um, so, it's been a while since we've done a podcast together. It's been since 2018 of August 2018, which is the last episode of Anum and the AM, 100 episodes you did. And it was episode 100, and that's when it ended. So, catch us up. What's happened in your life since August of 2018?
Cesar and I haven't talked for the past 2 years.
Yeah, no, that was the last time we talked. 2 years ago was the last time I was like, oh, you don't need me anymore. It's all good.
My heart. No, thank God. Cesar and I are still friends, just as a preface for all the listeners out there.
Yeah.
But what has gone on in my life? A lot.
Yeah.
I am trying to even remember 2 years ago. It seems like 20 years ago,
I
just
know,
based
right?
on the events of this specific year alone.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I quit my job probably a couple months after I quit the podcast. I went to Paris with my best friend in October of that year. And then November I quit. And I had like a 2-month hiatus from life before starting my new job at Compass. I started that in February of 2019. So it's been over a year now.
Yeah. Before you worked at, is it okay to say that before you worked at House?
Yeah. I didn't sign like an NDA or anything. It's on my LinkedIn. You can Google me. But yeah, I worked at House and a very interesting, life. So yeah, that was that. And then that's work on a professional level. Since then, Monis, who has been a guest on the show, is my youngest brother.
Yeah.
Graduated from high school, and he started school at Berkeley. We started remodeling our house, so I moved into my cousin's house for like 6 months. Actually, maybe a little. September to January. I don't know, math, whatever.
Yeah.
And
that's like
4 months.
4 months. Did it feel like
it felt
six?
It felt like a very long time. But yeah, then we moved back home January 2020, and in the midst of moving back, I was trying to buy my own house because I'd saved a lot of money from living at home. That I was like, you know what, I'm like ready to take this next step. I'm finally going to be independent. I found this house that like fit my life so perfectly. It was in Santa Ana. It fit my price point. There was a back unit that I could convert into an apartment. And it was like this cute 1-bedroom, 1-bath. And I put in an offer. After a couple of weeks, it was accepted. We opened escrow. And then in the middle of January, the seller pulled out. And so I didn't get my house, and that's when I knew that 2020 was just going to be a shit show. I knew from the beginning. I can always tell,
from the beginning of 2020 that it was going to be a really bad year.
I already knew. It's like, this is not, everyone's like, 2020 is going to be my year. And I was like,
no.
I
know for a fact it's not going to be.
And then I just remember in January, like when that happened, everyone was like, oh my gosh, and like, it's okay when one door closes, another one opens. And I'm like, yeah, but y'all like don't understand. Like the door that's gonna open could be a worse door, and you are not understanding that. But everyone's like, no, gotta be positive, gotta be hopeful, whatever. I don't believe in that bullshit.
You don't believe in that bullshit?
I mean, I do, but like, I'm just a realist or a pessimist. I don't know. So I kind of don't. Anyway, so that was January, and then February and March and April and May. March, I planned a trip to New York because it was my cousin's 30th birthday. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go there and like have a fun birthday for her. So that was the last time that like and even then I like a couple days before my flight, my cousin was like, are you sure you're like comfortable coming here? And I was like, yeah, dude, like there's nothing going on in California. And I literally went to the hotspot of the coronavirus before it became the hotspot of coronavirus. And when I was there, that's when I started getting like paranoid. And it was one of the first times that I felt like that kind of paranoia in my life, like in a very long time. And it was weird. Like I just had not felt that kind of a like fear in a long time. So that was weird. And then I flew back.
Wait, when was this again?
March 10th,
Well,
11th.
that's
to
when
the
we all
14th.
started feeling the fear.
Yeah,
When it started getting real.
But it just felt so much more real in New York because I'm reading, like, I'm on Twitter
definitely.
in the subway, and I'm like in the subway thinking, oh, I probably shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And there's old people everywhere, and like obviously there's just so many more people there. And I was like, these old people shouldn't be, like, you 100% shouldn't be outside. Like, I'm still young. And this is when the rumors were like, oh yeah, the young people are not being affected.
Yeah.
So much privilege, you know? And so I remember, like, my friend and I went to the Museum of Ice Cream. She had gotten us tickets to the Museum of Ice Cream, and we were like gallivanting around, but like so afraid to touch anything.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know, it was like fear mongering for the right. And obviously nobody had masks back then.
That was right before. It felt like a year ago now that we didn't have to wear masks.
Yeah, now that as I'm thinking about it. And it was funny because I had taken days off. And I remember thinking, like, oh, I'm going to go back to work, but I'm going to take my 14 days of quarantine. So I'll work from home, like, as soon as I get back to California. And then my boss messaged me on Friday and was like, hey, by the way, like, we're not coming into work on Monday. And I was like, oh, I was already not going to come into work because I had the day off. And then I moved my flight to Saturday. And then I just didn't work. And I mean, we worked from home, and it was just like a rapid work from home. The next week or 2 weeks later, like 4 people from our department got laid off.
Damn.
And then a month later, they notified us that our pay cut, like, we would get a pay cut for the, like, from June to August or June to September.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it's just been really weird. Like, I mean, I feel like I adjusted. I mean, I painted my room. I put up painting. Like,
it looks nice. That's your room.
Thank you. And so it's just been really weird. And then fast forward to now, last week, it's Sunday. Yeah. Last week on Tuesday, my uncle passed away.
Oh, man.
Not from coronavirus. He had a heart attack. So it still felt super duper sudden. Yeah. But it was weird because it's like super high highs and super low lows, because the week before that, my mom was like, oh, it's Monis's last week before, like, he has to start summer school, because he started summer school on Monday the 22nd, this Monday. Wow, that even feels like a long time ago. And she's like, we should go on a trip. And I was like, okay. Like, and then Bob was like, oh, we go to Zion. Like, we've been wanting to go to Zion. And I was like, okay, whatever, like, it's a drive, but we could just drive there. Like, we're not going to be taking an airplane, and we could get an Airbnb and just, like, take Lysol with us. Yeah. And so we, like, very randomly booked a trip to Zion, Utah. Nice. My dad took Thursday and Friday off. I only took Friday off, and we found a place with Wi-Fi, so I literally worked on Thursday in Utah.
Damn.
And then we went to see Zion. We saw, like, Bryce Canyon. It just ended up being like a Father's Day trip for my dad, and like a last hurrah before Monis's school started. So it was like so nice and so beautiful, and like helped like just remind me that, like, hey, like, there's still life that's worth living, that you're not just need to, like, be stuck at home all day.
Yeah.
And then
like,
you come back.
If you do it safely, you can still do all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, safely. We should have been wearing masks. But then it's like we're outside and we're hiking, and there are not as many people. Like, for literally at least 10 hours while we were in the park, there was nobody with us. Like, we were just walking by ourselves in this huge park. Like, it was insane.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like that. Even when I went to Joshua Tree before all this stuff happened, like, there's just spaces where there's nobody there because it's so big.
There's nobody. Yeah. And so that was nice. And then we came back on Sunday, and Monday was just like a normal day. And then Tuesday morning, my mom comes, like, sobbing into my room, and she's like, your uncle passed away. And I was like, what?
Shit,
and we had just seen him like a month ago. He was doing all right. And then last week he had like kind of a fever, like a cold. And then he passed away from a heart attack like Tuesday morning. And we found out like less than an hour after it happened, because she came into my room at 7:40. And then she's like, why don't you go over there, like, take them breakfast? So I went, and like his body was still in the apartment, and like my aunts and uncles were there, and like the sheriff was still there, and the coroner was there. And it was like the last time I had been that physically close to death was in 2013 when my grandma passed away. Yeah. And it was just so like surreal and so sad. I mean, and like in this, I don't know, we've been reading a lot about like people, how they're facing like death and coronavirus, where they can't grieve with their like family because you can only have like 10 people in a vicinity with you. And I was like, this is the first time I've hugged someone that's not like my direct like relative in like 4 months, you know. I mean, they're technically my direct relative, but like my parents, my brothers. And so it's just really like, and it's devastating. And so he's so young. He's like 49 years old. He has 2 kids and a wife, and I don't know. It's just been a really, really weird week.
Were you guys close?
Well, they lived down the street, so like we still saw them a lot, and like we would like have like pass by conversations, but it's not like we told each other our deepest, darkest secrets. But like him and my dad grew up in the same neighborhood in Pakistan, so it's like, I don't know. We have a huge family, so every uncle feels like not that close, but close.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's just tough. I'm close enough with his kids. Like I even picked him up from his work shifts before. Like I don't know. It's just another presence that's just gone.
Yeah. And that's a scary thing about he didn't pass away from coronavirus, but that's it. It's like one day to the next, you're just gone, and it's like, holy shit.
You have had a deep personal connection with that kind of loss before.
Yeah, I mean, it's well documented. But I mean, that's kind of segues into exactly, like, not that it was good, we didn't plan it.
It was not planned, but
that's kind of why I'm kind of doing this thing again, is because I want to have those conversations with my friends, and it doesn't look like we'll be able to have them in person for a while, but I want to have these conversations, like connect with people just in case, because you never know. It's pretty morbid, but what do you think about the concept?
I love it. And it's funny because I was thinking about it yesterday and like this whole past week, that since you mentioned it, actually we've been talking about the idea of this specific type of podcast for a while. So I'm really glad that you're doing it. But yeah, I think that it's so important to document the connections, especially now. I mean, he started doing TikToks with his family, my uncle. And so it's just like so surreal to go back to his like wife's page or his daughter's page and like see their TikToks. And it's just like such a funny, like sweet memory or like way to capture a moment. And so I think that having recorded conversations, whether it's video or just like voice recordings, I mean, a podcast, the podcast, it's important. It's like super duper important.
Well, thank you for being on here. I don't know if you're going to be the first guest, but you're definitely the first person that I'm recording with since I've started doing this again. So,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been a couple years. Something I wanted to ask you about, you know, having and I'm in the AM back in the day, was that there's been a lot of stuff that's happened, and obviously, like, except for the coronavirus, the protests, the Black Lives Matter stuff has been happening for a while. But was there a moment between the last time you recorded and now that you're like, oh man, I really need to bring back the show? I have stuff to say that I want out.
So many times. So many times. Since August 2018 to now, there have been tons and tons and tons of times where I've just like sat and been like, oh, this is happening, and like I want to say something about it. Or I feel like everyone should, like, we should be talking about this in like a public recorded setting, as I mentioned. Whether it was, you know, again, more stories about the kids being locked up in cages at the border, whether it's I don't know, just like interesting things that my friends are doing regarding art. But yeah, there have been a lot of times, and I just didn't, again, like, I'm not an expert in any of these things, so and that's one of the other things and another reason why I stopped doing it. It's like the kind of content that I wanted to put out, I wanted it to be a little bit more refined and just educated. And that's something that I talked about on the show. That's something that we've talked about before. And I'm not an expert. And so I didn't feel confident, like, talking about these things as if I am. And that's the tone that I give off anyway. So it's just tough to, like, it's such a gray area, you know?
Yeah. And that's something too that I've struggled with, even bringing this back. It's like, I'm not going to be the Daily Show or John Oliver where they dissect a topic like that. The best I can do is connect with people and then help other people that see this connection feel a little bit less lonely or inspired to have those conversations with other people, like
with their
So yeah, now that we've got the concept out of the way, Let's get a little bit deeper. It's usually the mics are off when we talk about the stuff on an AM, right? Like, or it's between segments where we're like,
stuff,
oh,
the
what's
juicy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The juicy stuff. So what's something in the last 2 years that surprised you about yourself or that you've learned? And how did you learn it?
Oh, I have done a lot of growth in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's always, I mean, a lot of unlearning and a lot of learning. Since we recorded, I mean, I feel like a lot of my friendships have gotten more distant, I don't know, and closer.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I derive a lot of my personal growth from my relationship with other people because I feel like obviously human connection is so important.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's just been interesting to like see how, I don't know, silent I am. And that's one thing that has grown a lot since we stopped doing an AM. I don't have a platform to necessarily like communicate my innermost thoughts.
Yeah.
I also stopped posting so much on social media, but it's been really weird. Especially, and it's something that I've like pinpointed a lot more just in the last few months because of working from home and like being at home with all of my family members, like how much power there is in being quiet.
Yeah.
And then there's also like a lack of power by being silent. I mean, one of the things we keep seeing posted again and again is like, oh, if you're silent, you're on the side of the oppressor.
Yeah.
And so it's just been interesting to me because so much of how I'm able to like a huge defense mechanism for me when I feel like I don't have power is to be silent. Like whether it's my mom or my parents like lecturing me, whether it's someone like saying something to me that's like against how I feel,
Yeah.
I feel the most power in not not saying anything at all. Like if I say something, that means I feel like I'm giving you the power back. Like if you irk me or bother me and I say something, that means, oh, what you said, like I'm acknowledging that you bothered me. But if I'm quiet, then I didn't give you any power.
You didn't get the reaction you wanted, or the person didn't get
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's to me more powerful. And so that's something that I have like really taken advantage of in the past couple years, just like the idea of being silent. And I feel like there's a lot of power in that because I'm able to conserve my energy. By not having to say or have the conversations, I don't need to expend my energy spending like time on doing that. But again, that's like a controversial thing to do in this day and age. And a lot of my friends have been mentioning this too. I mean, I've had really like a lot of Instagram messages with one of my friends who was like, oh, I feel like it's necessary to call out XYZ and to have the conversations with people who like say all lives matter. And I'm like, I don't know, isn't that kind of a waste of your energy? Like, do you really think that what you're going to say is going to convince them otherwise? Like, do you really think having that conversation with them is going to let them know that no, all lives don't matter, like Black lives matter. All lives do matter, but Black lives matter more. And so,
well,
and like,
let me could I have a counter argument to that. So the idea that you're not going after the crazy MAGA people, like you're going after people that are like 60% there or like 40% there. That's where I see the people that I know that are speaking up to people in their community. It's like, hey, you have it almost like, I see where you're going with this, but this is how you can improve. Do you think in that sense it's worth speaking up? No.
For me personally, no. I mean, I don't think it's worth speaking up against them or with them, if that makes sense. Like, I've seen so many of my own close friends and relatives post like, oh yeah, not all cops, like some cops are good cops. And it's like, okay, like that's a interesting thought. I don't believe it. And it's like hard for me to like go to them directly and say, and I don't know if it's not, I can't say it's from a place of fear. I just can like see in my head the conversation that's going to come out of it, right? Like the conversation or the argument they're going to bring to me. And again, I guess it comes from an assumptive place, which I shouldn't do. but it's just like traditionally and historically what has happened. Where I'll say, oh, you know what, like it isn't all about your friend, your one friend that you have that's a good cop. It's about the system that that person is playing into. And if you really believe that there is such a thing as a good cop, they wouldn't be a cop at all. But then it's really hard for me to verbalize that sentiment without feeling like I'm talking down on that person. And I think
it's because it's that's how because of the way that facts are treated nowadays, that you're like, you're the person, oh, okay, you're gonna hit me with the facts, and it's like, but it's true, like
that's a fact, exactly. And so it's just like tough for me because I can already see where the conversation is going to be headed to like try to correct their way of thinking without sounding like I'm preaching at them, you know? And so for me, it's just been best for me to just conserve my energy and think, okay, like your husband's a cop. I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you that the person who's putting food on your table is an enemy to like my life, you know, even though technically like they are. And so I just choose not to go into that conversation. And so in that situation, like silence is more powerful to me because I'm not expending that energy. And I was trying to tell one of my friends the other day, this is where the Instagram comments comes again, that instead of trying to spend your energy convincing these people that their one good friend who's a cop is like a good person, why don't you spend that same energy like educating yourself just a little bit more? Take that time, that 20 minutes, and read it, or spend time like donating to a bail fund or signing a petition, or you know, like having a conversation with someone who is a little bit more educated than you know, or like figuring out things that you can do that are positive to further what you feel and what you believe, and post about it, right? Like you don't need to have a direct conversation with someone who disagrees with you, but instead like use that platform to maybe like post an Instagram story, or maybe to make a post, or maybe tweet about it, right? And maybe that person who is your follower can read about it. And if you know that it just irks your soul that badly that you need to reply, then go for it. Like have that conversation. But I think having it a little bit less and less is going to help to push. Again, sometimes those people might be swayed, but I know where I stand is not to try to convince them. Like I've stepped away from that.
I don't think there's a I agree with you in that sense that some people are just lost causes, man. Like what, you're not going to get that if you don't know by now that saying all lives matter is not the right thing to do. Then I don't have time to teach you it. I don't know, like
but then I guess it is like to be my own devil's advocate. I feel like Black people, because again, this is about Black people and Black Lives Matters, and historically it's them who have been affected, have been the ones who have had to have these conversations, right? So their energy is significantly more drained than any of ours.
Definitely.
And so it kind of does come back to us to say, hey, like Black people cannot be cannot be having these conversations, but someone needs to, right? And again, it's like, but to who? And how long and in which way is it going to take for that one person or that specific subset of people who are at 40% or who are at 50 or 60% to like change their mind? And I don't know. It's just I still am. I know where I stand, but it's just like, okay, but then who's going to fight the good fight if it's not going to be me or you?
Exactly. That's the issue. Is like it has to be us, but at the same time, like, can I live up to that role? Am I going to be that guy all the time? Like,
and I feel like with some people, you can kind of tell. I will say there are like a select few people that you're just like, you know what? Like, you're almost there. So I'll educate you and I'll take the time to like be compassionate with you. But then the other people, I'm just like, like that post that I'll give you a tangible example before you transition into your next question. I posted about like we need to defund the police. I only have 3 posts that are about what's going on regarding civil unrest. And one of them was defund the police. This is something I've always believed in. And then one of the women commented, I respectfully disagree. And I was like, and I know this person, I work with that person. And so it took so much like just strength and energy to not reply because I knew she's also one of the same people that was posting about how she shouldn't have to wear a mask. So I knew, like, regardless of what, like, where where I stand, I knew that I would not be able to convince her. I do not have the power in me to convince her, and so it would be a lost cause. Did I want to respond? Yes. Did I just restrict her instead? Yes. So I feel like there's a lot more power in that.
Yeah. I mean, I spent time unfollowing people these days just because of the mask thing. Do you feel like we're making progress?
No. Yes and no. I was like, yes and no.
Yeah.
I can say no because the case, like, the curve was never flattened.
Yeah.
And so in terms of like progress and just keeping people alive, no.
Yeah.
People are literally dying and contracting this virus at, again, an exponential rate. Like 2.5 million people have been tested positive at this exact moment.
Yeah.
So in terms of that progression, no, states are opening back up. The government is not being held responsible for this. And that's not progress in any way, shape, or form. I just saw that Trump signed another, executive order for something stupid that I was just like, is this guy? Yeah, I don't even need to ask anymore because I know factually he's an idiot. But it's just like, I don't know. I don't have the words to. This is what I'm saying when I'm like, I can't verbalize it because it's so incredulous to me.
No, I meant like people
politically, people on a human basic level. No, did you see the freaking Florida city council meeting where that woman was just like, this is against God for me to be wearing a mask, and I was like, progress where?
True.
But then in terms of just, and then again, I cannot say like happily that yes, we are progressing in the right direction because so many of these white liberals are like, oh yeah, let me get rid of this person who plays a black character who's not black in animated television. That's not going to do jack shit. Change the laws. Like that's what he's break down the country, just burn everything down and start again.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Like,
yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you.
But are we kind of walking slowly at a snail's pace towards that? I don't know, because people are waking up, perhaps.
Yeah.
Like, more people feel comfortable saying things like defund the police. I think that's really important. But then after you defund the police, where do those people go? Yeah. And one of the other things that I've just been like reading up on and trying to learn more about is, okay, prison abolition. Like, that's something that I've been passionate about for the past few years as well. And it's not something that I've been super vocal about, but I follow Mariame Kabe on Instagram, hashtag or at prison culture, I think is still her handle. And she's been talking about abolishing prison for years. And I've been talking about like raising money for bailouts, right? That's something that's become a lot more mainstream since the protests started happening. But it's something that I was even talking about in May when I was like doing my fundraisers for charity or whatever. And it's something that I've been like reading up on for years. But what happens when you abolish prison? Right? That means you can't put the police officers in prison.
Yeah.
So what are we doing? What does justice look like? And that's where like the phrase of transformative justice comes about. But this is not an educational lesson. I am not an expert in this. So
yeah, no,
here I am just throwing out lingo.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just
it's
progress.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. I mean, I've been to a couple protests and it's literally a couple. And it feels like, but I feel like we've protested before, not us, but not me specifically, but people protested before, and it's like still wind up in the same situation. So I don't know. It's tough to be optimistic these days, or for the past couple of years. Not that I was to begin with.
We really were not. No. I was like, optimism? Who? Where is she? But yeah, I think it is nice to see, I will say, especially when the protests first started out over a month ago now. Not over a month ago, almost exactly a month ago, a month and 2 days. That there are significantly more people who are walking, like when Ferguson happened in 2016, there were people in the streets, people were protesting all across the country, but I feel like the level and the amount that it is now is not unprecedented. Like obviously these types of protests happen in the 60s, but I think that with our generation, it is the first time that we've been able to mobilize so heavily with so many people for this long period of a time. Like a month is a very long time if you look at freaking the tweets that we send out, you know, like just like instant gratification that our generation is used to, or not our generation, but like the times. A month is a long time. Granted, it's not enough, but it's something in the right direction. So in that way, there's like a teeny little like kernel of hope, more than it was before.
Yeah, exactly. It's enough to at least, you know, make you think the world's, I mean, it's all headed to shit anyway, but at least for today, you'll be all right. But some people don't, but let's acknowledge the fact that people don't have that security. Some people don't have that security of, hey, I'm going to be alive when I come home today. So it's like, how do we live in that world? How do we be optimistic in a world where that exists? I don't know. And that's not the answer I'm looking for. I'm just saying, if you feel like that, we're feeling it too, you know?
Everyone's feeling it. We can all die.
Yeah.
But that's something that I've acknowledged many, many times. Like so many times. We're all going to die.
We're all going to die. And the idea that we're all going to die motivated me to do this show. So thank you for that. For instilling that catchphrase in my head, that mentality of you're going to die anyway.
We are.
So Anum, tell me something. This is the deep question. What pain has informed your life view? What makes you think the way you think? Why do you think that?
This has been interesting because I've been thinking about this for a while. Yeah. It is a very deep question, and I honestly do not have like the best answer.
Yeah.
Because the nice thing about pain in my specific brain is that repression exists, and it's so like that's something that is a defense mechanism. Yeah. Like sometimes pain is like there so that it can be repressed and internalized and shoved away in a file cabinet somewhere, right? Like in the back of my brain. But I think for me, it's I don't know, it comes from a lot of different places. It's not like this giant like seed of pain. Granted, there are those too, which we're not going to delve into. But it's more of just like this compound effect of small pain. And so I think like generational trauma has a lot to do with it, right? That's something that's real. And I think that's something that I am privileged to not have like a huge load of. And that's to say, like, the only reason I even know that generational trauma exists is because of studies that have been done with stress related to Black people. And their generational trauma is so much more profound. But that's not to discredit my own trauma and the trauma that my parents and their parents have suffered through. India was colonized. There was a huge migration of millions of people from India to Pakistan, where again millions of people died. And that hasn't informed fully my way of living, but it has definitely brought upon stress that I'm not even aware of, you know. But it just impacts like probably why I am not able to think so positively all the time. Like it's something that's ingrained in me. But then on top of that, there's just like, I don't know, my parents don't have like the best relationship. We didn't grow up in like granted, privilege is something that I have to like think about contextually, but just like growing up in Santa Ana is not the easiest life. But then it's not even that, it's just like growing up in Santa Ana, seeing like living down the street from South Coast Plaza and seeing like that type of wealth from someone that like is at the bottom is not like, it's not a good way to grow up.
We're on the border of those two things. That's kind of where we went to school. Right
there. And so I feel like it's just been really weird. And it's not, again, it's just like little pain. Like it's not a huge giant dollop of pain. Here you go. But it's just like the little things that end up impacting your mindset. And I think for me, it's also just like all the memes you see where it's like, oh yeah, kids who were told they're like overachievers or exceptional and then not getting it, like just finding out you're mediocre.
Yeah.
Granted, nobody's really mediocre, but it's just, I want to say it's like trying so hard to accomplish things, whether it was like me trying to become a valedictorian or me like wanting XYZ and then getting so close and then not getting it.
Yeah.
Really reinforced in that, like reinforced the idea in me that hard work doesn't pay off, and like really helped me to understand that privilege is a huge thing. Granted, we all have privilege, just like being able to talk and like being able-bodied and being like cis, hetero, normal, whatever. Like those are all things that are great and amazing, but just like having to learn by working hard and not getting the things that you thought you were going to get, that privilege is a real thing, is frustrating. To see it from this tiny place and then seeing it on a huge scale across the country. And being an empath, like I definitely feel like I am very empathetic. I see people's traumas and I see like the things that other people go through, and it affects me profoundly and makes me not believe or want to believe in the structures that we have in place. Granted, I don't believe in the structures that we have in place in this country. And I haven't for a really long time because of that, right? So yeah, those are where some of my pains are derived from.
I think it's a lot of those things. I mean, I'm just hearing everything, and there's a lot of stuff I can relate to with. We lived on the border. We still live on the border of, just, I wouldn't say poverty, but like privilege and
it's not poverty, but it's just like, we are living in the place where there is the most poverty in Orange County.
Yeah.
And then seeing the exact opposite of that with literal billionaires. Like some of the people I work with have parents who have $1 billion. Like that's insane to me.
And it's like you walk from one street to the next and you're in a different world. The places that we went out to that we didn't, it wasn't like it was our scene. Like Tesco's Plaza, it's not for us. We're not shopping in those stores.
We could go to Sears. What are you talking about? Well, not anymore since it closed down.
Yeah. Oh man. So final question. What do you think? And this is
Wait.
What?
Are you not going to answer your own question? This is a conversation.
You want me to answer the question of where my truck? Okay, yeah. So I think mine comes from. It is generational. It's how I don't know. I guess it's how I was raised. I was raised to emphasize the consequences and not the rewards. So I was never a work hard, you'll get something. I was you better do this or you're going to get in trouble for it. You better get an A, not because it's a good thing to do, but it's because that's what we expect from you to do. And it's one way to raise a person. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, and there might be a resentment there from in my perspective, but I mean I've talked to my parents about that as well. My mom. It's like that. You see that you're always thinking about the consequences and not of the good stuff. So whenever I ever achieve something, I'm like, oh well, good. I'm glad I did that, because if not, it would have been really bad. Not like, hey, I'm celebrating it.
I'm so happy. Yeah.
So I think that's where it comes from. And then it's true. I did take a personality test recently. Like you said, I feel the pain of I see something and I can't stop thinking about that person's pain, and it really affects me like for a while. So
it just kind of sits with you, and then you just internalize it, and it just feels like your own pain, and it's not. That's something that I've been trying to unlearn recently, but it's also a good thing because I feel like it's important to be able to understand where other people are coming from. But
then I take it to the level where I'm like, well, I'm not going to be as good as that person. So what am I even doing? And then my self-worth lowers because I'm like, well, I see somebody that has less privilege than I have, and then I get upset about the fact that I'm not using my privilege to the full extent. But it's like you can only do so much, you know?
Mm-hmm.
we're all trying, I guess. That's my point. Is that we're all making an effort.
We are all trying. Again, a lot of unlearning, a lot of learning.
Yeah, I mean, and something that you were talking about earlier is some people that are 70% there. I feel like I'm one of those people. I'm not 100% there to that point, and that's why when I reach out to you about certain topics, I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? Because I want to learn from your perspective. And not that you're an expert, but it's just another voice, another perspective, you know?
I'd say I'm like 80%.
See?
But even then, I don't know. Yeah, I am. I feel like what I feel and I don't mind validating my own experiences. I think I'm at 80.
Yeah.
Maybe 75.
Because there's a certain privilege that we are born with privilege, but we're not white people. So it's like, you have to unlearn about yourself too. There's still a lot of self-discovery that I have to do about how lucky I've been to be alive, you know?
Yeah. Dude, just yesterday I was reading the story about this Korean woman who shot this black girl for, she said, allegedly stealing orange juice in the back.
Yeah.
Killed her. I think this was in the 80s. Yeah. And she didn't go to jail. She got like 500 hours of community service. That's it.
Damn. And that's the thing. It's like you see stuff like that in examples. Like I'm sorry, I'm late to this, and I'm not going to be like, oh, I just discovered Do the Right Thing. But you watch the movie Do the Right Thing. It came out in 1989, and spoilers, like the main plot point is a cop uses a deadly chokehold on somebody, and you're like, this was 30 years ago, and shit hasn't changed. And that's the stuff that pissed me off. Where it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. 30 years ago. I mean, the whole history of this place.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
The whole history, back to the Native Americans. Like, there has been no end to this. There has been no, like, right of the wrongs. It's just prevalent everywhere in everything.
Yeah. I was talking about art. I mentioned the movie that I watched, Do the Right Thing, but that's not my segment. It's your segment. There's something that you've seen, art that's impacted you recently that you want to talk about.
Yes, there have been a couple of things. So, my family and I started watching Avatar: The Last Airbender recently on Netflix. I love that show. It was really nostalgic for me to watch it again many, many years later from when it first aired.
Yeah.
And it was nice to watch it with my whole family. Oh my gosh, it's on Netflix. You can watch it. It's very, very sweet and endearing. And each episode 20 minutes, and it's just very fun and funny and something good to watch for everyone. But there were so many themes in that show that are relevant to what's going on today with regards to oppression and the way that people treat other people, which is nice to have in a kids show and to be so explicit about it. Yeah. And how people in power abuse their power. But that's been one show that's impacted me a lot, just feeling like I'm in middle school again and I'm in high school again has been really weird because I can be that I still remember how excited I felt when this episode aired in 2000 whatever, and now here I am 15 years late. I don't know math, I'm sorry people. Many years later and still feel that excitement for what's gonna happen next, even though I kind of remember what's gonna happen next. So that's been a good one. And then Pose. I started watching Pose a couple days ago, also on Netflix. And that's been
So what's that about? But I've seen promos, but what's it about?
Oh my gosh, it's so good. I feel you would really enjoy it, especially because you have been going to protests about trans lives and Black trans lives. Yeah. But it's literally just about the trans experience in the 80s in America. And it's so relevant because a lot of what these people are going through are their friends dying of AIDS and HIV. And it's a virus that can be contracted because people are not being safe. Mm-hmm. And so many people in the community are dying as a result of it. And so I was this is so relevant. This is literally what is happening. People are not being safe and people are dying as a result of it. And again, the show came out well before the coronavirus, but it's just interesting to see. And it's also interesting because I have read articles where people have been making the similarities between the HIV/AIDS pandemic in the 80s to what coronavirus is doing now. Mm-hmm. And it's affecting the same, not the same exact communities, but still historically more Black and brown people are dying as a result of it than the whites. Mm-hmm. And so that show has been really good to just watch. And I mean, I haven't been so passionate about trans lives. Granted, it's something that I have been reading about. I mentored someone who was thinking about becoming trans, and so I have been close enough to it. But I think that this helped to open my eyes pretty heavily on some of the just stupid inconveniences that we, as again, people of privilege, don't think about or don't have to go through, and it just like helps to put those things in perspective. So I think it's a really good show. I've just been watching it in the background as I work, but like it's so good. And I don't know what other things, other like pieces of art. I listened to Kehlani's album, Tiana Taylor's album.
That was really long, no? That was like good. 30 tracks.
It's really long, but it's just like one of those things where you could just play like one little section, and it's like it's. I love that there's sections that have different like full emotions and themes. Like it's called The Album, but it's like there's one part that's just like really like sad, and one part that's really wholesome, and one part that's motivational, and one part that's like sexy. And you're just like, oh, this is nice. Like if I only feel one mood, I only need to listen to one tiny section of it, which I like. I think it's cool. It's like a book. So yeah, I don't know. Those have been a couple of art pieces, mediums that have impacted me.
So I thought that because I'm just starting to do this again, it doesn't have to be an hour every time, but you could return every couple of weeks for 15 minutes and we can discuss whatever comes up. Because like I said, I look to you as the 80% to get me to the 80%, and I'm the 60%. So if that works for you.
You're like 70.
Yeah, I think so. So we'll talk about that in the future, and hopefully you'll be able to come back. But the question that I want to know from you is just, what does true happiness to you look like in your life? And if you could achieve it, what would it entail? What do you want? And you can take a minute. I can cut this out.
No, I don't even know if I need a minute. I feel like that's not something that's now I'm just thinking in like all of the little things I've read about happiness in the past few weeks. Because just last week I was reading about how the pursuit of happiness, Thomas Jefferson, he wasn't actually speaking about the pursuit of happiness. He was talking about like the pursuit of property. But he couldn't say it in that many words.
What?
He's a slave owner.
Wow.
And so it's just, again, like these little things are so ingrained in like the foundation of this country that it's really hard to extract from it, which is probably why this time is so painful. Sorry, that was the tangent that I was going to go to talk about happiness, something so sad.
Do you think do you think pursuing happiness is like the flaw in all of this? Is that we just don't appreciate what we have now?
No, because you can find happiness and joy in anything, right? Like happiness is not a place. It's not something like you can be in pursuit of happiness your whole life and be sad. But like, I think for me, happiness is in tiny moments, right? Like I'm profoundly happy today. Like I get to hang out with my family. I just made chicken noodle soup for the first time. Like it's just like little things, you know? But I guess for me, like the ultimate happiness is, I don't know, having like looking at the news and not having to think about like homeless people and like starvation in Yemen and like, I don't know, a balanced world where people care about each other and are compassionate and their motivation is not derived from exploiting others, you know? But that's like such a hopeful, idealistic thing that I don't think is possible. Like the realist in me knows it's probably never going to happen in our lifetime. Climate change will probably get us before. Like we'll die because of other people's selfishness. So it's like, for me, like, what are the little things, right, that I can take from? And that's like having my little house, taking care of my little orphans, my little foster kids, and providing some sort of foundation for them, like the next generation, to live freely, right? And to live without feeling like, where is my next meal going to come from? Or who is going to take care of me? Like being able to provide that feeling to someone is something that would give me happiness.
Well, that's an amazing answer, and I'm glad that you have something like that in mind. I think that it's important for people to think about, what do you want in your life, and and like you said, some of the stuff is idealistic, but at least you do what you can to make that world happen. If it's not going to happen in our lifetime, we put in as much as we can so it happens for our kids. So Yeah, man.
or their kid, like if they exist. Like
If
I
they're
feel sad that like my kids won't even be able to like eat sushi, you know, because there's so much poisoning in the ocean that's
Oh
gonna
man.
prevent that from happening. Like how depressing. Um.
Jeez.
So yeah,
I
I don't know. I
don't
always have
know.
to ask. I always have to end on like a really sad note.
No,
But
it's okay.
maybe one of you will make a policy that will inform the cleanliness of the ocean. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, I think there's no definitive end, just like there isn't in life. You just keep going, and I'm glad we talked about all this stuff. Thank you for being on here and for the hour of your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me. This has been so great.
Yeah.
Should we start Anum in the AM again?
I told you that's up to you. I don't know. That's
We'll see. We'll see how I feel in a
because
week.
it'll be quarantine edition. It would have to be because we're not gonna get out of quarantine.
Yeah.
For a long
I'm
time.
not coming to a studio anytime
No.
soon.
Yeah, I feel icky, so it's all. Shout out to Anum for, talking to me, and yeah, man, she's somebody that I kind of like look up to in the sense that she kind of knows, she kind of keeps a level head on every situation. So I admire her for that. And shout out to her, shout out to Anum. So I mentioned earlier in the show that I was going to have a different, fund or charity to donate to. And today's first episode is going to be dedicated to the LGBTQ Freedom Fund. LGBTQ people are 3 times more likely to be jailed at risk of abuse, and many can't afford bail, and they help get them out. You can donate to them at lgbtqfund.org. I'll post that on the video right now. And yeah, man, it's especially, there's so many causes, but this one, it's like, oh man, there's so much abuse in the jail system. It just sucks. And even though people say like, oh, bail, like you're playing into the system, you're giving the money to the cops, it's like, would you rather these people stay in there and then continue to be abused? I think that's why it's good to get people out on bail, because then the charges might not stick. They'll help them get the defense, get them out and stay out. So lgbtqfund.org, donate to that. And that's it for the first episode of the new Cesar's Modern Life. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope I gave you something to not distract, something to feel with. That's the goal of this show, is me connecting with people, human connection, but also you feeling it with me, and maybe it'll help you get through it. It's not about distraction, it's just about connection. So yeah, man, I think I have adopted the phrase that I say on the Rodriguez Show as my my own personal motto, and I'm gonna just use it on this show too. Keep it funky, keep it fresh, keep it sexy. And when I say those things, it's whatever it means to you, whatever funky, whatever fresh, whatever sexy means to you. You do that. Keep it funky, keep it fresh, keep it sexy. And we'll be back on Wednesday with another episode. Bye.